اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك وانشر علينا برحمتك يا رب العالمين. We continue, inshallah, our study of the fifth guided Khalifa as considered by many scholars after Abu Bakr, Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, Uthman bin Affan, Ali bin Abi Talib comes Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, and Umawi, the Khalifa from Bani Umayyah, who revived the Khilafah like we studied in the last few sessions, and steered it back to the right path, the path of the Prophet ﷺ, the path of the Sahaba, the companions, and the guided Khalifa before him. And just studying the life of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz is really refreshing. It's a fresh air to the soul to see this Khalifa come at a dark time in history as far as leadership among Muslims. And how we saw the Khalifa deviated from the path that was drawn to them by the Prophet ﷺ and by his companions. And we started, alhamdulillah, last time studying how that came about. So there will be we really don't need to project it that much, but this will work as a guide for our outlines. We know that Umar bin Abdul-Aziz is the seventh Khalifa in the house of Umayyah, and the eighth, some scholars they count Marwan ibn al-Hakam, who is not counted by many, and he is the fourth Khalifa in the house of Marwan after Abdul-Malik, Walid ibn Abdul-Malik, Sulaiman ibn Abdul-Malik, and then comes Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. We know his Khilafah was short, and we lasted for only 2 years, and we studied his upbringing, his rise in Medina, and then his knowledge-seeking among the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, like Sa'id ibn Musayyib, Ibn Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, and Salim ibn Umar ibn Khattab, among others. And then we studied how he went on and became the governor of Medina, and later on the governor of Hijaz, and then he was made sit down after the request of the Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, then his becoming Khalifa. And we're studying his Khilafah, the way that he ruled the Muslim world, and the path that he has. And we studied his love to the early Muslims, to the first community, the house of the Prophet ﷺ, his shura, his council, with the clerics and the scholars of his time, and then his principles of justice and equality. And we saw how his equality went across the ethnic lines, tribal lines, and also across religious lines, where his justice reached the non-Muslims as much as it did the Muslims under his reign. And then preserving the public money and his awareness of keeping the treasury of the Muslims and preserving that for the benefit of the Muslims. And then we talked about his open door policy. And we continue, inshallah, today. And then we saw how he fought corruption in the house of Umayyah. We continue today in a very important topic that distinguished the Khilafah and the reign of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, and that is the public welfare. The public welfare and how Umar bin Abdul-Aziz had the people taken care of at the time of his government. And as it's reported in the history of the Muslims, is number one, he started with living a very ordinary life, him and his family, while diverting the wealth of the Ummah that was much enjoyed by the house of Umayyah, that was started being diverted to people. Being diverted, what a concept, diverted to the poor, diverted to people who actually need that money. And it was time of luxury, as we will see, but it was not just time of the luxury for the governors and the people in charge. It was really time for wealth in the Ummah. We know the Muslim territory at that time was from the borders of China and Kashmir to all the way to the south of France. in Narbonne. And Umar bin Abdul-Aziz's treasury was full. But what he did is he started first taking care of handicapped people. And that was one of the early concepts at that time, to take care of the handicapped. It was the government's responsibility to have a guide for every blind person. So every blind person had an employee by the government to show them the way and guide them around and take care of the services that the blind need. And then he said, in the history, he said for each 2 handicapped people would send a servant to serve them, to take the food that they need, to buy them the things that they require. And then asked the treasury in Damascus to give salary. So this is really, we see this concept being applied in the 21st century. The entitlement, the welfare system, the social security system. And we look 1400 years back to the reign of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, and we saw how he had actually a social security check coming to every person that is needy at that time, that is a handicap. So he did have that service. And then this is the history as it's reported in 2 books, Ibn Abdul Hakam and Tabaqat, or Ibn Sa'd, to the governor of Damascus, and he said, do not give people out of the charities given out of their requirements, entitlement to these people. And he said, إِذَا أَتَاكَ كِتَابِ هَذَا وَلَا تَعْمِ فِي النَّاسَ وَلَا تَعْصُرْهُمْ وَلَا تَشُقَّ عَلَيْهِمْ فَإِنِّي لَا أُحِبُّ ذَلِكَ. So don't give difficulty to the people and don't make it hard for them. Make life easier for the people in need. And after that, people would ask about the poor and the needy. And he got to a time in the reign of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz that when the money of the treasury would go out, there were no poor people to take out of this money. So to change that, Umar bin Abdul-Aziz asked for whoever in the Muslim Ummah who has debt, that the government will pay the debt for that person. And those are known as al-gharimun, the people who are indebted. And he wrote to his governors, and this is in the book of Ibn al-Hakam. He said, إِنَّا نَرْجُو to pay the debt for those who are indebted. So the governors wrote back to him and said, we go to this house, and we're supposed to give them money, and we see that they have a horse, they have furniture, and they even have servants. So how can we pay people that have servants in their house? So Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, he said, لَا بُدَّ لِلرَّجُلِ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ مِنْ مَسْكَنٍ يَأْوِي إِلَيْهِ. He said, everybody has to have a house, so it's not too much for that person to have house and furniture. وَخَادِمٌ يَكْفِيهِ مِهْنَةً, and they need people to help them. So it is not too much for them to have actually servants in their houses. وَخَاسٍ يُجَاهِدُ عَلَيْهِ, and he needs a horse to have the house. He said, what you're talking about is actually the basic needs of the life. وَأَتَاكُمْ فِي بَيْتٍ, and furniture in the house. وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ فَهُوَ غَارِمٌ. If they had debt, فَقْضُوا مَا عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الدَّيْنِ, you pay their debt back. So even though some people were not very needy, like we see from this historical document, still Umar bin Abdul-Aziz insisted that if they are indebted, then the government should pay their debt. And that just shows you the wealth of the government at that time, and then the caring of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz to his people. The other thing is, in the public welfare area here is what he inherited from his great-grandfather, Umar bin Khattab, how he would check on people, how he would patrol the nights and check on people in his kingdom. So he had a servant, his name is Muzahim, and we'll talk about Muzahim a little bit later tonight, inshallah. And so he would go with Muzahim, and they would go to the rest areas where travelers come by. Why is that? Damascus is really, if you look at the map of the Muslim territory at that time, you see Damascus is really a crossroad for east, west, north, south, and it is the capital. So the rest areas around Damascus, there are many people that are traveling, let's say, from Khurasan, from what Afghanistan is today, to another they would pass by Damascus. And people who are traveling from the North Territories going to Hijaz would pass by Damascus. So to check on everybody, he would go to these rest areas and he would ask, what can you tell me about people in Khurasan? What can you tell me about people in Sindh? What can you tell me about people in Andalus? So that was the place where you would find Muzahim and Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. So one time he asked about someone in Medina, and this is also in Ibn Abdul Hakam. He said, one of the people in Medina, he said, تركت المدينة والظالم بها مقهور والمظلوم بها منصور والغني موفور والعائد مجبور. There's some sort of rhyming words, and this man said, I left the Medina, the Prophet ﷺ, and the transgressor has been kept to bay. The transgressor has been locked up, and the oppressed has been supported, and the rich people are happy, and the poor people are being helped, are being supported. So everything is good. And then Umar said, if all the territories are like this, then that would be better to me than anything the sun would rise upon. Meaning that this is my goal, this is what I want. And one time he wrote to his governor, Maymun bin Mahran, and he was criticizing his own self, Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, or looking to find out if he is making any mistakes. He said, if you get any orders from me that is not rightful, and it's not in the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then throw my letters away, throw my orders away. He said, إِذَا جَاءَكَ كِتَابٌ مِنِّي عَلَى غَيْرِ الْحَقِّ فَاضْرِبْ بِهِ الْأَرْضِ. So, Umar ibn Usayd said, when Umar died, then at the time when Umar's death happened, we would have people coming to us with charity, and they would come with a lot of money, and they will find no takers. They will come with the charity, and they will find no takers because of all the justice. And then this tells you something about society. If social justice is applied in any society, then you will really not find needy people to the level of poverty, and you will not find filthy rich people to the level of extravagance in their wealth. And social justice does not mean socialist principles or communist principles. It really just means the justice of Islam and applying the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what Yahya ibn Sa'id said, and this is the very famous documentation that it's a fulfillment of the Prophet ﷺ's prophecy. When he said to the Sahaba at the time of great need, he said, there will come a time of my ummah where a charity would go around and not touch until it goes back to the treasury of the Muslims, meaning there will be no needy people. And that happened and documented in the time of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz based on what Yahya ibn Sa'id said. And this is also narrated in Tarikh al-Khilafah and in Ibn Abdul Hakam. Yahya ibn Sa'id said, بعثني عمر بن عبد العزيز على صدقات أفريقيا. Send me to collect the charity of Africa, meaning North Africa. فقضيتها, so I collected the zakat, the charity, and he was a collector, he was a charity collector. وطلبت الفقراء, and then I started checking, asking for the poor people to distribute the money that I got. فلم نجد بها فقيرا. We could not find a poor man, a poor family in the entire province of North Africa. He said that the entire charity of North Africa, there was no house that would take the charity in North Africa. And then I asked Umar bin Abdul-Aziz what to do. فاشتريت بها رقابا فأعتقتهم. He said, buy slaves and set them free. وَوَلَاهُمْ لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ, meaning they were non-Muslims. They went out and they bought the freedom of non-Muslim captured people, captured into slavery. So that was the way that they distributed the charity at that time. They didn't find Muslims takers. They did not find free people that are non-Muslims to take, and they just bought the freedom of the non-Muslim slaves at that time. So that is really a good example of the justice, the wealth, the equality, and the mercy of the reign of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. And he would also advise Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, the people people that are under him and they are in a position of authority, like the governors and the princes of the provinces, to be careful with the public money and to take only enough for them. And he fought corruption. And he fought corruption under his reign in a big way. And he prevented the people in authority to work as merchants, to work in trading. And he said, لا يحل لعامل تجارة بسلطانه ألا يتوب عليه. You cannot have business in an area that you are in authority. I mean, this is really obvious why it should not be. If you are in a place of authority, then you will try to change the laws or influence people that they know you're in a position of power to make yourself look wealthy. I don't need to bring you any examples, really. But he said, إن الأمير متى يتجر يستكبر ويصب أمورا فيها عدل. He said, an emir, a person of authority, when they work in business, then they will treat themselves well. They will do good to themselves. And that's just part of human nature, but Islam does not approve of that. وَيُصِبْ أُمُورًا فِيهَا عَدْلًا. If you transgress, they will do something that is not right. وَإِنْ حَرَصَ إِلَّا يَفْعَلَ. Even if they don't want to. Even if they're careful not to transgress. He said, it is bound to happen. An example of that comes a lesson that he learned probably from his grandfather, Umar bin Khattab. Remember when the son of Umar bin Khattab, radiallahu anhu, bought camels and he sent it out to graze, to feed in the plains of the Muslims. So Umar bin Khattab was out one time outside Medina, and he sees this beautiful cattle and very healthy and fat, and they're just eating well. And he said, to whom do these belong? And they said, to your son, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he called upon his son. And he said, what is that? He said to his father, who knew who Umar bin Khattab was, and he said, it's all halal. I bought it from my own money, and I sent it to the place to eat, to feed and graze, and I'm just going to sell it. And there's nothing haram in it. What am I doing wrong? And he said, then people would look at your cattle and they would say, this is the cattle of the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So they would let it eat first. And when your cattle go to drink water, then people would let it go first, because it's the cattle of the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, you cannot do that, and he made him sell it. And he made him take his capital and put the rest of it back in the treasury of the Muslims. So this is what Umar bin Abdul-Aziz is saying, that even if you try to avoid corruption, when you are in a position of authority and you are trying to have a business, then there is a conflict of interest. There is an obvious conflict of interest that happens between authority and trying to make money. You cannot be in a place of authority and try to make money out of people. And the other thing he said, he prevented the governor under him from accepting any gifts from anybody. And he said all the gifts are bribery. The gifts that are given to people in authority are bribery. And he prevented taking advantage of the position to one's own benefit or to one's family's benefit. The other thing that he did in taking care of public welfare is he, at the places of rest and the travelers, he placed small hotels or motels or places of rest known as al-Khanat, and people would rest there and they can feed their rides. Of course, it would be a camel, horse, or mule, and have rest of them. And this was on the expense of the government. The government actually took care of those rest places and facilitated travel to the people at the time of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. And I want all of us to pay attention that all of these things were not happening. Some of these things, the public service and all of that, something, alhamdulillah, we enjoy a lot, and especially in countries and advanced societies like the country we live in. But at that time, it's really things that are unheard of. For the government to do all of that, to have guides for the blind, to have servants for the handicapped, to have places of rest, and to pay the debt of the people that cannot pay their own debts. I mean, these are things that are really show you the advancement in the morality at the time of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. The other thing that highlighted his Khilafah is a deep feeling of responsibility. And the heart of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz was heavy like the heart of Umar bin Khattab. There's always comparison between Umar bin Abdul-Aziz and Umar bin Khattab that you cannot avoid. And they're calling the just two Umars in our Islamic history. Like when Umar bin Khattab said, I'm afraid if a mule or camel tripped in Iraq, he was in Medina, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask me, why did you not pave the road for that animal? Ya Umar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, أَخَشِيتُ إِنْ عَثُرَتْ بَغْلَةٌ بِالْعِرَاقِ أَنْ يَسْأَلْنِ اللَّهُ عَنْهَا لِمَا لَمْ تُصْلِحْ عَلَى طَرِيقَ يَا عُمَرَ. And one time Fatima bint Abdul Malik ibn Marwan came to her husband, and she found her husband, Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, weeping. And she said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, al-Shay'in hadath, what happened? What is the matter? What is wrong? And he was weeping by himself, and he said, Ya Fatima, Inni, and this is in the book of Al-Bidayah and Nihayah to Al-Hafiz ibn Kathir. He said, Ya Fatima, إني تقلدت من أمر أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أسودها وأحمرها فتفكرت في الفقير الجائع والمريض الضائع والعار المجهول والمظلوم المذكور والغريب الأسير والشيخ الكبير وذي العيال الكثير والمال القليل وأشباههم في أقطار الأرض وأطراف البلاد فعلمت أن ربي سائلي عنهم يوم القيامة فخشيت ألا تثبت لي حجة فبكيت. And he said, I remember that I am I'm a responsible man. I am responsible for all these people. He said, it is the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that is now under my custody. And the black and the red, everybody, all these nations now under me. And I thought about the hungry poor. I thought about the sick people. And I thought about the naked people that cannot buy their clothes, and the oppressed that I cannot hear their complaints, and the people in prisons, the people that are in custody, and the elderly, and the people that have too many children but little money, and many others, all in all these territories. He's feeling the heavy weight. He said, look at this vast territory. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask me. He said, on the day of judgment, I will be asked about all of these people and all of these territories, and I feel like I cannot have any proof before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I have no excuse before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why I'm weeping. And one time, another history is reported again in Al-Bidayah and Nihayah ibn Kathir, that the son of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, now this is the son of the Khilafah of Umayyah, he was playing with some children outside, and one of the children hit him with a stone, and he cut his head. He injured his head. He had a gash on his head, and he came to his father bleeding. Now, put yourself in that position. And if your son is coming crying and bleeding to you, and the Khalifa, the person in the authority. So the parents of that other kid who injured the son of the Khalifa came rushing, feeling that some retaliation may take place against their son. And they came to Umar, and the mother came, it's not the parents, the mother that came, and that was an orphan kid. And she said, Innahu ibni wa innahu yatim, please don't hurt him, he's my son, and he's an orphan. She's still asking the Khalifa to have mercy on this orphan. And Umar said, Hawni alayk, take it easy. So he looked at that orphan that just injured his son's head, and his son is bleeding, and he said, does your son have a salary from the treasury? And she said, no, he doesn't have a salary. And he said, well, describe him a salary. Why is this orphan doesn't have this? Look, his son started taking care of the person that injured him, of that orphan. He said, why doesn't he have a salary? Why is he not being taken care of? And Fatima was wiping the blood out of the face of her son, and he said, you do this to this boy, and you just made your son bleed? And Umar said, he's an orphan, and you're scaring him. Don't scare that little boy. Don't scare them. Just kids that are playing. And you just see what was in the heart of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. And his mercy went beyond having mercy on the people. He also had animal rights in the reign of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. And really, when I read some of these things, it's just amazing when you look at all things that really have any moral values today, all these humanitarian society, and you just go back to the religion and you will see evidence that Muslims, at the time of their justice, at the peak of their Islamic state, they applied all these good principles, and one of these principles is taking care of animals. One time, Umar bin Abdul-Aziz wrote, and this is reported in the book of Ibn Abdul Hakim, to the Sahib al-Qurb. He had a transportation secretary. He had a person who was in charge of roads. And he said, do not put heavy saddles on the horses and the mules. He made a law that nobody should overload the mules, the camels, and the horses. So he put limits on how much you can load an animal at that time. And another reported history is one of his servants had a mule, that he would work that mule. Umar had an investment with Abdul-Aziz in a mule, and that mule would work in carrying things in the marketplace. So you load the mule, you transport it. It's really those freight businesses. It was a mule at that time. So the mule would bring to Umar usually 1 dirham a day. It would bring him 1 dirham, which is really not much money, and that was the job of that servant. So one time, the servant brought to Umar 2 dirham. Every day will bring him 1 dirham, and the next day he brought him 2 dirham. He brought him twice the amount of money. And Umar was not happy. He was angry with his servant. And the servant said, why are you not happy with, I brought you twice the amount of money that I bring every day. He said, attacked and covered. He said, you made the mule tired. If you brought twice the money, that means you made the mule work twice as hard. He said, he gave the mule vacation for 3 days. He said, bring the mule back for 3 days. So this is how Umar bin Abdul-Aziz looked at his responsibility. The other thing is, we said, like we said before, he fought corruption and he felt the responsibility of the position. So not only he asked his governments to refuse to take presents, he would not accept any gifts. He, as a Khalifa, would not receive any gifts. So a man came to him and he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, Inna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam kana yaqbal al-hadiyya. He said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam accepted the gift. The Prophet, there was a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ would accept the gift. Why can you not accept the gift? And Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, he said, إِنَّ الْهَدِيَّةَ كَانَتْ لِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ هَدِيَّةً. He said, the intention of the gift, when it's given to the Prophet ﷺ, is a gift. But to us, أَنَّ لَنَا فَهَا رَشْوَةٌ. But the intention of the gift, when it's given to us, it's a bribery. It's a bribe to us. That's what it is. And he would also make sure that his judges would not accept gifts and they would not accept any special treatment. And he took care of the justice system in a way that the burden of proof and the level of proof in the justice court has to be very high. And this is narrated by the judge known as Yahya al-Hassan, who was the judge of Al-Musul. And Brother Nabil was asking if that was a Christian person or not. Actually, it's not, because he was a Muslim judge over the Muslims. So the judgment in the people among the Muslims in the Muslim territory has to be given to a Muslim person. So Yahya al-Hassan was the judge over Musul, and he said, I found Al-Musul من أكثر البلاد سرقة ونقدا. I found in the most corrupted territory. So I sent to him and asked him, I cannot prove many of these crimes. He said, أخذ الناس بالبنة. Can I just, if the level of suspicion is high, can I punish people? he sent to Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, he said, what do you call it now, preponderance of evidence, but it's not really called it red-handed. And or I have to have a very clear proof. And Umar said, no, you have to have the proof and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. No matter how high the level of the suspicion is, you cannot punish people from suspicion. And then he said, فَإِنْ لَمْ يُصْلِحَهُمُ الْحَقِّ فَلَا أَصْلَحَهُمُ اللَّهُ. He said, this justice, this truth will rectify the situation of people. They will come back to the right path. And Yahya said, I did that, and when I left the Muslim, it was the least crime rate among all the territories at that time. Now, we spoke of animal rights, refusing gifts, and his treatment with his government. One of the things that I want to spend, inshallah, a little bit more time on tonight is how Umar bin Abdul-Aziz chose the people that work with him. Now, one of the most important functions of the people of authority to be careful and pay attention to their advisors, to the people that are around them. Because you can be advised by people that actually have bad intentions. And you can be advised by people who their only goal is to make you happy, to please you as a government. So these are two people that actually can give you bad advice. And he wanted to make sure that the people around him give advice the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His prophets. The advice that is based on piety and advice that is based on Islamic tradition. So choosing the people around him. Who did he choose to be one of his council people at the time of the Khilafah? He chose his servant Muzahim. Now, he was a servant to Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. And one time, he said, أنت وزيري وأنا أحبك في الله. He said, I love you in the sake of Allah. And you will be my wazir, my assistant in government. And Muzahim said, why do you want to give me a position of authority? And he said, Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, قال رأيتك يوما تصلي وحدك في الصحراء صلاة الضحى. He said, one time I saw you on a very hot day praying extra prayer of duha in the desert. And you were all by yourself, you didn't want anybody to see. So I knew there was power in your heart. And he said, وَرَأَيْتُكَ تُحِبُّ الْقُرْآنِ. And I found you love Quran. I know you love the Quran. And a person who fears Allah and loves the Quran, then that is the person that you want to take the advice from. And he said, فَكُنْ مَعِي, be with me. And Muzahim said, أَنَا مَعَكَ, I will be with you. And it is reported in Sirat Umar ibn al-Jawzi, and that is one of the really best references in the life of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. One time, Umar bin Abdul-Aziz locked up a person, and the talk is about Muzahim. He locked up a person, and the punishment expired, the time that was ordained for that person. So Muzahim came and told Umar bin Abdul-Aziz that the sentence is finished with this person. So Umar said, ما أنا بمخرجه حتى أبلغ الحيطة عليه بما هو أكثر من الله. He said, I'm still suspicious, and I think we want to be on the safe side, we want to be on the cautious side, and keep this person locked up for a little bit more, fearing the safety for the people. So Muzahim got angry with Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, and he said, Ya Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, Ya Umar, he didn't say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Khalifa, my master, Your Majesty, Your Highness. He said, Ya Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, Inni uhaddiruka laylatan tumkhidu bil-qiyam. He said, beware of the night, which morning is the day of judgment, and the hour will be on the dawn of that day. وَفِي صَبِيحَتِهَا تَقُومُ السَّاعَةِ يَا عُمَرُ, O Umar, لَقَدْ كُنْتُ أَنْسَسْنَا, I almost forgot your name. He's telling Umar, I almost forgot that your name is Umar. مِمَّا أَسْمَعْ قَالَ الْأَمِيرُ قَالَ الْأَمِيرُ. The prince, the governor, the Khalifa said, and the Khalifa said. And Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, he said, أول من أيقظني لهذا الشيء مزاحم. The first person that woke me up to this is Muzahim, to the possibility of abusing power
to the possibility of going overboard with authority. And he said, فَوَاللَّهِ مَا هُوَ أَنْ قَالَ ذَلِكَ فَكَأَنَّمَا كَشَفَ عَنْ وَجْهِ غِطَاءً. He said, as if he unveiled something from my face when he said that. So he accepted the advice of Muzahim, that this was Muzahim. This was the servant of Umar. When it's the time for truth and justice, he would tell it as it is. And that's why Umar bin Abdul-Aziz chose this person. The other person that he chose is another helper. His name was Muhajir. And the job of Muhajir is, he said, as described by Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, he said, Ya Muhajir, qum bi janibi. O Muhajir, you stay with me. فإذا رأيتني ظلمت مسلما أو انتهكت عرضا أو شتمت مؤمنا. He said, if you see me transgressing or oppressing someone, or dishonoring someone, or cursing somebody, فَخُذْ بِتَلَابِيبِ ثَوْبِ. Then take hold of my garment and shake me, and tell me, اتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَا عُمَرَ. Fear Allah, Ya Umar. So that was the job of Muhajir, is to hold on to Umar, shake him, and to tell him, fear Allah, Ya Umar, if they feel that Umar is transgressing. And the other recommendation of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz is, he said, there are 5 traits in people of authority and judges. He said, if these 5 things were in the judges or people of authority, then they would perfect their job. عِلْمَ كَانَ قَبْلَهُ. They have to have knowledge of what they're before. They have to be people of knowledge, to be people in authority. وَنَزَاهَةً عَنِ الطَّمَعِ. They cannot be greedy. They cannot have material ambition. وَحِلْمٌ عَنِ الْخَصْمِ. They have to have forbearance. They have to be patient with their arguments. وَاقْتِدَاءٌ بِالْأَئِمَّةِ. And they have to follow the A'imma, the Imam of the Muslims, to follow the people that were before them. وَمُشَاوَرَةُ أَهْلِ الرَّأْيِ. And they have to counsel others. If people have these 5 things, the knowledge, no greed, they will not have material ambitions, they have forbearance, meaning they do not rush to judgment and they do not rush to punishment. Because in a position of authority, these 2 things can happen. And they follow the path, the right path before them, and they counsel with others, and that would be the people that he would use. And that was his skill of choosing people. And the other person that he chose, a man, his name was Amr ibn Muhajir al-Ansari. And this is another well-documented story in Tarikh al-Khilafah, with Suyuti. And Amr ibn Muhajir was chief police in the time of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. He was the man over the guards, over the police, over the executive authority under Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. And Amr bin Muhajir asked Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, why did you choose me? Why do you think I'm worthy of this job? Why do you think I can lead your police? And he said, Ya Umar, Wallahi la ta'lamanna annahu ma bayni wa baynaka illa qarabat al-Islam. He said, the only kinship, the only relation between you and me is Islam. He said, you're not part of my family, you're not from Umayyah. Here's why I chose you. He said, لكني سمعتك تكثر تلاوة القرآن. He said, I heard you that you always recite the Quran. So this is one criteria. And then, وَرَأَيْتُكَ تُصَلِّي فِي مَوْضِعٍ تَظُنُّ أَنْ لَا يَرَاكَ فِيهِ أَحَدٌ. I saw you one time in the masjid, praying in a place that you thought nobody would see you. فَرَأَيْتُكَ تُحْسِنُ الصَّلَاةِ. And I saw that your prayer is perfect, that your sujood is long, that you saw how you worship Allah when nobody sees you. وَأَنْتَ رَجُلٌ مِنَ الْأَنصَارِ. And you are one of the Ansar, the Sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the Sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. خُذِ السَّيْفَ فَقَدْ وَلَيْتُكَ حَرَسِي. Take the sword because you are the chief of my guards, you are the chief of the guards of this ummah. So one of the very important functions of the Khalifa, of the people of authority, is to know how to choose people under them, people that will not increase the corruption, they will not use their position to advance their own agendas, but to advance the entire ummah, and people who will not use the advice that they give to the Khalifa. Another thing that he did with his governors, by choosing them well, by advising them well, is he also gave them good salaries. He gave them a lot more than his own salary. So it is reported in history, in Al-Bidayah wa Nihayah of Ibn Kathir, that he would give salaries a month of 100 dinar or 200 dinar, which was quite a bit of money at that time. And they said to him, لو أنفقت على عيالك لو أنفقت كما أنفقت على عمالك, why don't you give your children as much as you give the people under you, you give the governor that work for you? And he said, I don't prevent them from having rights, that this is their own rights as salaries, and I don't take money from others to give them. But his policy was, if you give them enough, they will have no greed. They will have no need to try to abuse their position. But if they do, they have no excuse. If one of them abuse their position, and they cannot say, oh, we have to do it, we don't have enough. So he gave them enough salary where they cannot complain about their income. And if they ever abuse the authority that is given to them, then the accountability will be very high. And one of his principles, like we said, is if it's a situation that is suspicious of an accusation is made and it's alleged, then the level of proof has to be high. And this is one of the famous words of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. He said, "Idra'u al-hudud bi-shubuhat." He said, do not apply the punishment for the sake of suspicion. فإن الوالي, this is the very famous words of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. إن الوالي إذا أخطأ في العفو خير من أن يتعدى في الظلم والعقوبة. He said, to make a mistake in forgiveness, meaning to let a guilty person go free, is better than to punish an innocent person. It's better than to oppress or transgress on the rights of an innocent person. Al-Jarrah ibn Abdullah, who is the governor of Khurasan. Khurasan is the area of Afghanistan today. He said, إِنَّ خُرَاسَانَ قَوْمٌ سَاءَتْ رِعْيَتُهُم. He said, these people are making me very tired. They're just bad people. And meaning nothing toward the people that actually currently live in Afghanistan at that time. He said, I'm having a hard time with them. وَلَا يُصْلِحُهُمْ إِلَّا السَّيْفُ وَالصَّوْتُ. They need sword and whip. He said, give me some authority and I'll make him go on the straight path. Just let me deal with him with the sword and the whip. And this is not far-fetched at that time. I mean, this is the post-Hajjaj era. I mean, people are used to being dealt with the whip and the sword. This was the way of the governance, and he was the governor of the entire Eastern Territory from Iraq and onward, the Hajjaj, and that was his way. So this Wali al-Jarrah felt like people now are abusing the mercy of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing because there's no whip and there's no sword, because the Hajjaj is gone. So he said, فَإِنْ رَأَى أَمِيرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَأْذَنَ. Please give me permission so I can put them back on the right track. And he said, أَمَّا بَعْدُ. So this is the reply of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, Tarikh Khilafah. He said, بلغني كتابك تذكر أن أهل خراسان قد ساءت رعيتهم وأنه لا يصلحهم إلا السيف والصوت. كذبت. He said, no, this is wrong, this is a lie. يصلحهم, if you want to correct them, then يصلحهم العدل والحق. Justice and honesty. Justice and truthfulness. This is what will correct the affair. فَقْصَدْ ذَلِكَ فِيهِمْ. If you spread justice among them, then that will make them good. وَالسَّلَامُ. And one time he wrote one of his governors saying, لَقَدْ كَثُرَ شَاكُوكَ وَقَبْلَ شَاكِرُوكَ. He said, I hear too many complaints and not much praise about you. He said, something is wrong under your territory because I hear a lot of complaints about you and nobody is telling me any good things about your government. فَإِمَّا عَدَلْتَ وَإِمَّا اعْتَزَلْتَ. You either be just or step down. وَالسَّلَامُ. It was about, one sentence. He said, كَثُرَ شَاكُوكَ وَقَبْلَ شَاكِرُوكَ. فَإِمَّا عَدَلْتَ وَإِمَّا اعْتَزَلْتَ. وَالسَّلَامُ. That's it. He said, if you don't do good, then I want you to step down. And the last thing that inshallah we want to spend a little bit of time with, and this may be the last thing tonight, we have 15 in Islam is he said that a lot of the conquest of Bani Umayyah in the era, the time, the period of time just before Umar bin Abdul-Aziz was imperialistic expansion in the lack of other words. It was expansion for the sake of increasing the territory, having more of truly an empire, more wealth, more people under you, and more tax to be collected, and increasing the wealth of the people of Umayyah. But the true goal of the conquest or expanding the Muslim Ummah is to spread Islam, to spread justice. And that's what Umar bin Abdul-Aziz wanted to revive in the conquered territory. And one thing that Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, in one of the documented letters in history, in the book of Al-Kharaj for Abu Yusuf, is Abdul Hamid ibn Abdul Rahman, who is a governor of Al-Hira at that time, which is in the middle of Iraq. He wrote to Umar bin Abdul-Aziz a weird letter, but that tells you the state of mind of the people at the time of Bani Umayyah just before Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. He said, too many people of the Al-Hira are coming into Islam to avoid paying tax. So I want you to allow me to collect the jizya from them. He said, they're coming into Islam and my income, the tax income, the jizya income is going down. So I want you to give me permission to continue collecting that from them because their intention is not to pay tax. So he's now looking at the hearts of people, which is, that is not something that Islam allows. So he said, I ask you permission to take this. So here's the Umar bin Abdul-Aziz reply. He said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ جَلَّ ثَنَاؤُهُ بَعَثَ مُحَمَّدًا صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ دَاعِيًا إِلَى الْإِسْلَامِ وَلَمْ يَبْعَثْهُ جَادِيًا. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he sent Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he sent him a caller to the Islam, a caller to the way of Allah. He didn't send him as a tax collector. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not send Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to collect jizya. This is not the purpose of when we go to territory. He said, great, they want to come to Islam, then they come for whatever reason they want to come to Islam too. This is the purpose of our message. He said, فَمَنْ أَسْلَمَ من أهل تلك البلاد فعليه في مال الصدقة ولا جزية عليه. He said those who come to Islam, they will actually be worthy of receiving the charity. They should now collect from us if they are poor, and they will pay no tax, and they shall pay no jizya. And the same thing that Ubay ibn Abdullah wrote to Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. He said, الناس قد كثروا في الإسلام. He said, too many people are entering Islam. وخفت أن يحل الخراج. I cannot send you enough money. I cannot send money to the capital. I cannot send money to Umayyah. And Umar said, والله لوددت أن الناس كلهم أسلموا حتى نحن أنا وأنت حراقين نأكل من كسب أيدينا. He's telling his governor, said, I wish that all people become Muslim and we collect zero money, we collect no money, and you and I will be peasants. We will work in the field and we will eat out of the work of our hands and we won't know money of the jizya. He said, you have to pay attention to why we're doing this and the whole idea of this. And he also revived the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in مؤلفة قلوبهم. And مؤلفة قلوبهم, the hearts that lean towards Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, like he did, and after the battle of Hunayn, is he would give Safwan ibn Umayyah a lot of wealth. He would give Muawiyah and his father Abu Sufyan, both of them were not Muslims, he would give them loads of gold. And they were not Muslims, and we know what happened and how some of the Ansar got upset. But this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that you can actually give zakat, you can give the charity to those who their hearts are leaning towards Islam. If their hearts are leaning towards Islam and they need a little push, you give them money. If that's what's going to take for them to come into the right path, and that is fine. And that's what Umar bin Abdul-Aziz revived. And Bani Umayyah in general would keep the wealth in Bani Umayyah, not for many Muslims, so much less non-Muslims that are inclining towards Islam. But it's known that Umar Ibn Abdul-Aziz gave one Christian leader 1,000 dinar, and then later that person became Muslim. And in Khurasan, after that letter to Al-Jarrah ibn Abdullah, who wanted to whip people and kill people, etc., 4,000 people were given from the money of the charity, and 4,000 people in the area of Khurasan came into Islam. And two areas that where Islam spread greatly in the time of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz is the territory of As-Sind. As-Sind is where Pakistan is today. And at that time, he wrote to many of the Rajas, to many of the kings of that time, of that area, and he offered them Islam and leave their kingdom under them, leave their territories under them, and let their wealth be with them, and to let them not pay jizya, not pay the tax, and to have the life of the Muslims. And that was very appealing to the Rajas of those places, and many of them entered into Islam. And the book of Al-Kamil of Ibn Athir on Futuh al-Buldan and Tabaqat said that many people at that time started changing their names and taking the Arabic names in those areas of the Sind and then coming into Islam. And the other area was Al-Maghrib, was the North Africa, the western areas of North Africa. He said the entire Barbar, the entire tribes of Barbar who rebelled many times before Umar bin Abdul-Aziz against the Muslims, they all entered in Islam. And then, inshallah, tonight we'll conclude with one of the most important achievements, the most important contribution of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, the one contribution that we all indebted to the Day of Judgment to Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. And this event is just as important as the collection of Al-Quran by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Many of the scholars say that this religion owed its preservation obviously to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and after them to the position of a few people after the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Abu Bakr wa Umar wa Uthman, who Abu Bakr ordered the collection of the Quran. Umar put it together in one mushaf, and Uthman put it on one type of writing, and he spread it in the territory. So these three Khalifa have the credit for having the Quran with the way of Allah preserved to us till the day, inshallah, till the Day of Judgment. So Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, he was the first Khalifa that ordered the writing of Hadith. The Hadith was not written before the time of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, and many of the scholars like Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahimahullah, say when the Prophet ﷺ said that every century Allah will send a person to revive the religion. So we looked at the first 100 years, and we looked at the second 100 years, and so Umar bin Abdul-Aziz is the divider. Because he ordered this actually in the 100th year after the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ, or in some narration in the 102nd year. And he ordered to start writing the hadith. And that happened in the first time, according to Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani in his book Fath al-Bari. He said the first person that wrote the hadith was Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. The great Muslim scholar Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, على رأس المئة, at the 100th year after the Hijrah, the Amri Umar ibn Abdul-Aziz. It was the orders of Umar ibn Abdul-Aziz. And he said, start collecting the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and the order was recorded in Sunan al-Durani, in the book of al-Durani. He said, "Unzuru hadith Rasulillahi taftahu." He said, start collecting the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and start writing down the hadith. فَإِنِّي خِفْتُ دُرُوسَ الْعِلْمِ وَذَهَابِ أَهْلِهِ. He said, I'm afraid that the knowledge, that this will start go astray and start going away. And that was the very first book that is written, the very first collection of the hadith was written by Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, who died in 124th year after the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. But he started collecting the hadith by orders of Umar bin Abdul-Aziz. The collections of the hadith and the Musnad, the first books of hadith that came after that, really credits the advancement of the knowledge of jurisprudence, of the Islamic fiqh, and we will see, inshallah, later on when we start studying the lives of the great imams, the leaders of the knowledge in this ummah, how this order by Umar bin Abdul-Aziz was pivotal in reviving the whole Islamic jurisprudence knowledge and preserving the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and started the science of the hadith, the knowledge of the hadith, which is now a very important Islamic science. And only a few years back we lost one of the last modern scholars, Sheikh Nasr al-Din al-Albani, who died in Damascus, and he was one of the great scholars of hadith. So inshallah, we will stop here and open the floor for any comments or questions or any additions that you want to make. And we will try to spend the next session, inshallah, the last session, with Umar bin Abdul-Aziz, with his character, with his fear of Allah, with his ascetic lifestyle, his humbleness, his steadfastness with the truth, and then we will spend time on the events that surrounded his death and the end of his Khilafah, inshallah. So until then, we ask your forgiveness for the shortcomings, and we ask your dua, and inshallah we'll all be preparing for Ramadan, which is just around the corner, inshallah. No. So the question is very important, did he actually give orders to the authentication of this ilm of the hadith? He started the process, and we know he died 1 year later. But he gave the orders to the Shihab Zuhri. He was one of the great scholars. The science was known. I mean, people would give the hadith, and this is only 2 generations after the Sahaba. So when the hadith would be narrated, it would be Malik ibn Anas who would say, I heard Nafi' says that Umar ibn al-Khattab said that the Prophet ﷺ said. So it wasn't many people. It was not really a long chain of hadith. This is only 100 years after the Prophet ﷺ. There's only 2 generations of people between the Ibn Shihab Zuhri and the Prophet ﷺ. So many of the hadith that were written down at that time was very high in sanad. We know there's the sanad al-ali, the sanad Muhammad. The sanad al-ali, the chain of the hadith is very short. And many of the hadith that was documented at that time was very short sanad. So later on it was perfected by the ulama of the hadith until the time of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and later on came al-Bukhari or Muslim. It came 200 years later to put the Sahih, to put their documentation. Inshallah, we'll talk about that when it comes out. There is no questions, inshallah, we conclude with the dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us the best of our religion and to guide us on the right path, and to give us the knowledge to follow the path of these people and follow the good examples of our Islamic history, these things that will, instead of having despair in our heart, we have hopefulness, like the sun rose again at the time of Umayyah, the time of tyranny, the time of many dark things to happen. Inshallah, if the sun can rise again in our nation and we can revive the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ, but we can't do that without acquiring the knowledge that is necessary to do that, inshallah. جزاكم الله خير. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.